Welcome to the Goddesses of Social Work podcast, hosted by Renita Ray Davis, licensed clinical social worker, board-approved social work clinical supervisor, and facilitator of the Goddesses of Social Work supervision community. Join us as we travel through the social work journeys told by the Goddesses of Social Work community members, past and present, as they make their way toward clinical licensure.
Welcome to today's episode of the Goddess of Social Work podcast. I'm your host, Renita Ray Davis, and I'm here today with Christie Ackmann, LCSW. Christie Ackmann is a licensed clinical social worker with over 20 years of experience working across the mental health advocacy and public service landscapes. Christie holds a Master of Social Work from the University of Utah and has served as a clinical supervisor, program manager, and private practice therapist specializing in Buddhist psychotherapy. Currently, Christie serves as a clinical case consultant with the state of Nevada's Adult Protective Services, where she helps guide complex case consultations and supports person-centered care for older adults. Christie's work is rooted in wholeheartedness, a value that has become central to her life after confronting burnout and personal loss. Whether she's mentoring new social workers, responding to crisis situations, or working with vulnerable adults, Christie brings deep empathy, fierce advocacy, and a belief in the human spirit to everything she does. Get ready for an inspiring conversation about resilience, advocacy, and what it means to live and work wholeheartedly. Welcome to the show, Christie.
Wow, thank you, Renita. Wow, thank you for that welcome. It makes
That
me fired up. Let's go.
yes. And I'm going to say, what an amazing bio. There was so many things I could have pulled out of that for our first question. But I think what really stood out to me the most was you are a specialist in Buddhist psychotherapy. And I know that you said you've listened to the show a few times. So, you know, I've had an astrologer on, I've had a yoga specialist, I've had so many people who are in the spiritual practice who are also social workers. And so I'm curious, what is Buddhist psychotherapy?
Oh, right. So, I mean, just like when we come from different theories, right? So I also come from object relations or attachment theory, right? Is how I think about clients. Um, I think being in the field of when I was doing private practice and I was coming from Buddhist psychotherapy, it just really helped and allowed me to bring myself forward into the process and helped me think about um, just just the way that we create our own suffering and how our mind, when it's untrained, um, can really get in the way and create these really self-limiting beliefs for us. I was invited by a friend of mine back in 1994 to sit in on my very first meditation book club, gathering. And I just remember the very first time, like, okay, what if I just laugh the whole time, right? What if, and she was so welcoming and just like, great, come in and laugh the whole time and, be who you are and bring all of who you are. And from that very moment, like, so much about Buddhism just made sense and just spoke to me. Um, and I think the blending of Western psychotherapy and Eastern philosophy um, really bridged a lot of gaps for me, right? It brings the sacredness into the moments. And eh, I mean, just like I'm a social worker at heart, I believe in the Buddhist philosophy at heart. And I don't think that's something that you can take away or take out of the experience. And so, when I was in private practice, it really just allowed me to um, offer these mindfulness practices and these relational practices to clients that were really looking to go deeper in their experience of life and to bring the wholeheartedness into their presence and their way of being and to change their view of themselves, who they are as a person, their self, um, and to kind of get out of their own way and just allow themselves to shine through. And to me, I mean, that's what the whole practice is about, whether it's social work, whether it comes from a Buddhist lens, from any of these other lenses. I think it's about really finding our own way first and then showing that to other people,
Mm-hmm.
and helping them then find their way. It may not be exactly our way, but I think the way we wholeheartedly go into our own beliefs and our own practices, just brings that aliveness forward. So I don't know. I don't know if that
That was a
is
beautiful
exactly where you're going.
answer. Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
beautiful answer. And Christy, of course, we're going to get into your social work journey, but when you were talking, you know, I have a couple different spiritual lenses that I work with in my own practice, and for me, especially since I was in academia before I went into private practice,
Mhm.
one of the things that I remember, and I'm trying to do this, ask this question in a way that doesn't go into your social work journey because I want to hear that full story. But we were just talking about our ages, so we've been doing this social work thing for a minute. So I feel like we come from that same generation of um, we were kind of taught, and then I even think when I was in academia, we were teaching students to keep their spiritual practices separate from their social work
Mhm.
practice.
Yeah.
When you became when you specialized in your private practice as a Buddhist psychotherapist, how did you work that out within yourself to be able to practice social work from the Buddhist lens?
Um, well, the very first question that came to my mind was, who am I to do this? Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the very first question that came up for that. And I started my private practice right after, it was 3 years of, so my grandmother died, my dad died, my mom died. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think, there's certain pivotal moments in time in our lives where we forget about all the noise and we forget about all the things that people tell us we have to do or should do, or how to be in this world. And that was one of those moments of, I need to do, I don't know, who am I to do this? But that's the small self that's saying that, right? And um, I don't know, it sounds so cliche, but it felt like a calling, and it felt like
Mm-hmm.
the right moment for me just to step into that space of claiming who I am, and seeing if it can be of benefit or be of skill, usefulness to other people. Um, yeah.
And apparently it has been. It is to me even in this
Hmm.
moment. So thank you. Because one
Hmm.
of the things I do, and I love that you also are a clinical supervisor, but one of the things I do with the guys of social work supervision community that I have the honor of facilitating is we talk about what their passions are and how to incorporate that with social work. So I had, a beautiful one of my supervisees just got her yoga certification. And so she came, we did an event and she did, yoga for us, as a
Yeah.
social worker, as a licensed social worker. We talk about, my sister's a music therapist, but I have social workers who sing and who are
Yeah.
in music directors at their churches and whatnot, and how can
Yeah.
they bring music into their social work practice. We talk about the creative arts and all these other things that people are so passionate about, and they think they have to keep that separate. So not
Mm.
even just our spiritual beliefs, but even just our passion beliefs, they think they have to keep it separate because we're not, I think, as OGs, haven't done a good job. I think we're doing better of saying, no, bring all of you. Like that's what you're basically saying. Bring
Yeah.
all of you into the social work space because when you bring all of you, then the client or whoever you're serving can also bring all of them as well.
Yes. What a beautiful way of saying that. And absolutely right. I mean, if we split off and cut off parts of ourselves, um, yeah, I mean, that it takes away from the being rooted and being wholehearted in ourselves. And you're right. I think it's such a beautiful thing that's happening these days where yoga is part of
Mhm.
therapy, where, the whole somatic lens that's coming, being in our bodies and really understanding that and how that lends itself. It's no, it's no longer just sitting on the couch and, or, it's not even that I'm the expert.
Mhm.
It's really turned into a field where I'm the guide walking alongside you, and I may know the terrain a bit, but, it's your map and it's your territory, and you're the one who holds the wisdom and holds the answers. But there's something about, I mean, speaking about the social work journey, I think that was the biggest thing I wanted to say is that
Mhm.
um, I really think like whatever you, as a new social worker, whatever you think you're going to set out to do, okay, but I think it's going to change, right? I mean,
Yeah.
certainly did for me. I have
Mhm.
grown and experienced so many things over my 20 some years of being in this field. And the beautiful thing to me about this whole career is that it can grow right alongside with you. As much as you can go into it, it'll be right there for you. And I mean, I think the other piece is the piece that I didn't understand when I first became a social worker is that um, you have to evolve.
Yeah.
That you have to. You
Yeah.
you can only your experience is not going to be the same as someone else's. But if you're not feeling grief, if you're not feeling depression,
Mm.
if you're not feeling sadness, like you have to be able to walk that yourself, in order to, whatever depth you're able to go to yourself, that's the depth that you'll be able to take your clients. And, you'll get stuck at times and be able to come back to it at a deeper level when you're OGs like us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think the quicker and the faster, and I see the younger folks doing this actually, the
Mhm.
quicker that they can follow their truth, and step into following their heart. Um, yeah, it took me, oh my gosh. So I'm 55, almost 56, and it took me about 50 years to finally get to, a place where I feel like I belong, I feel comfortable in my own skin, and where I can come on a podcast and use my voice.
I love that for us. You've already blessed me so much already in just a few minutes that we've been on. Two things that came to mind when you were just talking. One of my favorite phrases, we can only take a client as far as we're willing to go, right? I know you've heard
Mhm.
that. And, then the other one that goes along with that, that I used to say, and then I started pulling back from saying it, but I think I want to start saying it again. My favorite kind of social workers are those of us who had to swim upstream. And that goes
Mhm.
back to being able to experience grief, being able to experience the evolution, being able to experience triumphs, and being able to become a diamond, out of the rough. Or is that same energy of social workers having to swim upstream? And then we can teach and help our clients, whoever it is we're serving, whether it's on therapy or whether it's in yoga or whether it's in a choir, the dementia choirs that I love seeing all over the country. Wherever we're serving, we're able to be a guide
Mhm.
to those folks that we are serving. But you're wanting to get into your social work journey, and I want to hear all about it. And I want you to start from the beginning and tell us, go to wherever you want to, because I think I just have a lot to learn from you today. So, what is a little bit about your social work journey, Christy?
Really, see, that's interesting. Like, I don't know that I was so focused on my social work journey just because, it feels like it has been a long time, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so, yeah, I was kind of just going to vaguely gloss over some of those details. But in thinking about and preparing for this, what I realized was I was fired from my very first social work job. And it and everyone should get fired at least once. Yeah, and I'm certain I'm still not the easiest person to supervise, right? Um, but that's okay. Um, yeah, yeah, and but I think there's something, I worked, first of all, even before my master's degree, I worked for crime victim compensation, and so we financially assisted victims of violent crime. And there was something about like hearing about someone's pain of being random victimization of things, and you know, there was like this sort of naive tangibility of like, okay, well, you shouldn't have to pay for these expenses that were no fault of your own. And so at least let us approve and give you some money, right? So there's like that naive sort of social work justice, right? That often doesn't happen. And um, that's what catapulted me to go back and get my master's degree, because I just felt like, I don't know, I just felt like I had so much more to learn about the field and really wanted to move forward with that. Um, but yeah, so then I think moving into my first job, it was with Division of Children and Family Services, which is probably, I would venture to say, one of the hardest fields ever to work in. And I came at it with a fierce advocacy and, a young naivety. And yeah, I'm sure I was challenging a lot of things, and they're like, no, we're not doing this. So, um, you know, I, I will say, so I think one of the most important pieces that I want people to hear is that I was so, so lucky to land in my second placement, second employment right after that one, because it was in a nonprofit community mental health center that had this whole bent on making sure that supervision was fantastic, was ethical, um, and that they were really, really looking out for building new therapists and new social workers, right? That was their entire mission and their entire goal. And so it was just such a fantastic learning environment and learning opportunity. I'm so glad I got fired and landed over here in this space, right? And sometimes we don't know why things happen, right? That's just the world, that's the universe that happens. And and I think, yeah, that is just my thing. And I see it happen so often now where it's like either for profit and money churning machines that some of the agencies have turned into, or places are just so understaffed and overwhelmed that we lose sight of how important it is to really develop young therapists and young social workers. So I can go on and on about my but getting that solid foundation of supervision, what it then feels like to me is it's not me supervising someone, it's not me um, being there. It's like, I get to be the vessel, and I can see the people behind me, and I just get to channel um, everything that they've given me. And so it just feels like this, ancestral lineage, and it's beautiful. So I don't know. Do you really want me to go into all the nuts and bolts of, I mean, I've had so many, I feel like, so I've been blessed. I've had a huge opportunity, and my career has been fantastic. I love it. And not always, not every day, but um, it's gone the gamut of working with court mandated substance abuse, court mandated domestic violence, um, mothers and babies group where they learned attachment. Um, Mothers who were struggling with methamphetamine and sometimes had their babies taken away from them. We got to bring them back together and really teach them about attuning and attachment disorders. I've worked in state run agencies that are really work with the seriously mentally ill, um, and learned so much about that, learned so much about the person centered
Mhm.
approach, and how a lot of times, like, caregivers, well-meaning family, um, social society at large, we either want somebody to do something about it, even if the client doesn't want us to do that, or, I don't know, we kind of want to push people in a certain direction, or there's,
Mhm.
I don't know. So that was really just a eye-opening process for me to be in. And same thing now where I'm at with adult protective services, working with older adults. I think I definitely want to segue into this piece is because um, working with older adults is not something I ever envisioned really doing. Although I had great relationship with both of my grandparents, but um, I don't know, it just never felt like a draw to me to actually use my social work and my clinical license in that way. I have to tell you, it's been one of the most rewarding,
Mhm.
even though it's with the hardest percent of the population, right? I mean, this is adult protective services. These are people who really need our help and, really are in dire straits at times. And maybe people who have no other supports. But I have to tell you, like just the eye-opening pieces around mindset and
Mm-hmm.
perspectives that we can take on this human life is fascinating, just fascinating. Like I can go and meet with a 60-year-old who is mired in their own misery and who maybe has financial support, maybe has family support, lives in a nice neighborhood, like has a lot of things going for them, but they're mired in their misery. And you can
Mm-hmm.
just see the physical decline that comes along with that. And then the next visit, I go and meet with a 96-year-old who is penniless because a caregiver has just exploited their $1,000 a month Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
And, they just had to move into a smaller place. And their view is, oh, I've never had a view like this before. And you can just feel the positivity and the feistiness and the fight in them. And you can see why they're 96, right? I mean, so I think just being in this field has really helped me see how much mindset really plays a role in our health span, our lifespan, our happiness, and our well-being as we age. So I kind of skipped a lot of middle parts. I don't know where you
That
want to go
was
with that.
beautiful. No, that
Okay.
was I could listen to you all day. And I also want to say, because I know part of this journey for both of us is finding our voice, and you have a beautiful voice. I could listen to your voice all day, and you're speaking a lot of wisdom. And I want to go back to giving some wisdom to the social workers who are coming behind us. I
Mhm.
love that you got fired. Like I said, I got fired too on my first job. But what I heard you say you got fired was because, and I see it all the time. I don't know if you see it in the spaces that you get to supervise in, but we're young social workers and we have a lot of ideas about how things should be. And we're going into these entities that have been around for over 100 years, Child Protective Services, DHR, we call it here in the South, or DYS, or whatever it
Mhm.
is. They've been around for over 100 years, and we have our social justice lens, and this should be this way. And what I often am encouraging the social workers I get to supervise is speak up.
Mhm.
Speak up. Even if you're just moving the needle just a little bit, speak up. And Christy, what I heard you say, you spoke up and that led to you getting fired, but then that led to you getting into a place where you can be nurtured and supported and thrive and grow. And so a lot of times some people are scared to speak up because they have this one job, thinking this one job is the totality of their career. And
Yeah.
honey, as long as you got your license, you want to go?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And, I would also say if, I had a young supervisor, and I don't want to
Yeah, of
say
course not.
anything bad about
Hmm.
her either. But, I had a young supervisor. If I would have had the supervisor I had at my second location, who most people knew her as Tina until she needed to be
Hmm.
known as Dr. Rich, right? And
Hmm.
so, and if I would have had a supervisor that could help contain some of that unbridled, untrained, right, fierce advocacy, yeah, I mean, and I think it is a testing out, right? So being able to speak your truth, and your supervisor is going to be one that can help you grow. Or if it's something where it's just really a bad fit, and it's, just like I just said about mindset, and if, I mean, I don't want to have this mindset where, um, it's about scarcity, not abundance, right? And where it's about staying small, not playing big, or not wanting to change systems, because our systems need to change. Just like you were saying, like to be able to speak up around things is so crucial. And we also need to find those folks that can help us speak to those system changes in a way that can get those changes actually made and not just blow up the whole systems, right? Because,
Right.
yeah, that's important too. Yeah, so I mean, just to also say about systems that there are really phenomenal people who do work in these systems as well. And I think,
Hmm.
there are true public servants and that are committed to being in state systems, county systems, federal systems. And I think, when you're lucky enough to find those people, they can really shift the field, and they can really, right now I'm in that moment. So we've
Mm,
recently, in the last little over a year, we've gone through a whole administrative change where, some of the old guard has retired and moved on, and but I am now led by a 36-year-old,
mhm,
fierce, feisty, full of passion, and wise soul who sees the bigger picture, sees she can look out and see the vision for the future, for the organization, and she also can attend to really tapping back into understanding how to take care of her supervisors, take care of her staff, and how that just feeds that parallel process down into then the clients get taken care of, right?
mhm, mhm.
Um, and it just like makes me so excited. It warms my heart just to see. I get amazed and delighted every day just by the young leaders, the new and emerging leaders that are stepping forward. And that's an odd place, right, for me to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm 20 years older. But at the same time, I mean, it has to, I'm so excited because there's so many of our systems that are antiquated and outdated and just, they're not. Like we were just talking when we started about leading with all parts of you and the wholeheartedness and the yoga and the things that bring us to life. And sometimes these systems can really dim our lights. And yeah, so when you find that leader, build them up. And, I honestly, I am staying currently because I'm just so excited. I want to support my Helen Uriarty is her name. You totally should have her on here. And yeah, it's just important to me, I think, to be a part of the field now, stepping more into that elder role
Yeah,
myself,
yeah.
and seeing that as part of the social work journey.
I,
Um,
I
yeah.
love that. And before we get to where you are in your journey now, one of the things I was thinking about, some of the women that I have the honor of supervising that are, 20 years younger than me, 20, even 30 years younger than me. I'll say 20 years younger than me are, one of the things they come to supervision with every now and again, not as often as I used to hear it, but every now and again is that some of the older social workers are kind of like oppressing them. And I guess, you know, the fact that they're coming to supervision with me, I hope I'm not one of those, right? And it sounds like you're cheering on your younger supervisor as well. How can we, what can we say to those who may be in our age group who are seeing these young, beautiful social workers come on with the energy and the passion to change some of these antiquated systems? How can we as older social workers, and I mean older and not ready to retire yet, but still, still have plenty to offer, what can we do to support
Mhm.
these young leaders coming up?
Yeah, yeah, the whole intergenerational
Uh-huh.
process that's in the workplace, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I can only speak to my experience, and I think that um, if I'm feeling burned out, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I am so much less able and less, my capacity just isn't there to support that young go-getter, right? I mean, you do. There are times when you get into this jaded place and like, okay, here we go, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I think it's about renewing ourselves, right? And renewing
Mhm.
and recognizing our role. I mean, just like our career doesn't stay static, I think our roles don't stay static. And so to be able to fluidly and not stay rigidly stuck where we are thinking we know this or that, but to be able to renew ourselves, I think that's where it's at for me is recognizing that um, I am stepping into a place where it's about passing the torch, right? And not to say that
Mhm.
I'm done here because I have a lot left to give, but it's probably in different directions and different avenues. And
Mhm.
so now for me, however long I'm at this kind of state organization, like I'm really about lifting up other people and really stepping into that space where, how can I be of service as a um, older adult, an elder? Um, yeah, I mean, I feel way too young to say grandmother, but it's that grandmother
Yeah.
energy, right?
Crone,
Um,
that crone energy.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And you can step, I mean, I honestly think my boss at 36 has crone energy, right? So you can step into
Mm-hmm.
that. You can step
Mm-hmm.
into that at any time. But I think that's what it's about is um, if you're pushing or oppressing or, you know, judging others, yeah, it's just I think it's about where am I? Why is this coming up? And why am I feeling jaded? And how can I bring, I mean, I keep coming back to this wholehearted word, but I think that's really where it's at because when we disconnect or separate from our own heart, that's where a lot of damage gets done. And so, yeah, I don't know. That's how I stay
You're doing this is so
connected.
good. Yeah, this is so good. And when you were just talking, I have said every year I've been in social work, after the 15th year, after the 20th year, and now here I am on my 26th year,
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
still in love with the profession, like, and I
Hmm.
think when you um don't can't say that anymore, then you have to do that
Yes.
self-reflection of, why am I not in love with the profession? And so even after 26
Hmm.
years, being able to say I'm still in love with the profession has come from doing that self-reflection, but also knowing, I love that you're saying don't stay stagnant, evolving,
Yeah.
continuing to move. One of the things I tell my supervisees is, after, even if you love the field, the population you're working in, it's just good sense to go to a different agency. Go to a different agency, go to a different organization, one, to see how their office stuff goes. Like, what is their EMR? What is their admin like? What is their billing like? Just to see how a different agency or organization is doing it. But also, as MSWs are graduating, they're getting paid more than what you're getting paid, right? So then if you go and you leave and go to another agency or organization, you have a better footing or ground to negotiate a higher salary. Then if you want to, you can come back to the agency or organization, bringing what you learn from being in other places, and not stay stagnant just in your career just because you love a population, agency, or organization. Because what I've noticed, when you stay someplace 20, 30 years, that's where
Hmm.
the bitterness and the jadedness can potentially come. So even those of us who, are aunties or elders in the I'm calling myself an auntie, an auntie in the profession, what's that next thing that you can do that doesn't get you stuck thinking that,
Hmm.
in a scarcity mindset, that this is the only position that there ever will be. You got to protect it with everything in you, but know that
Hmm.
there is abundance for all. There's a lot of sick people in this world, and there's abundance for all, and there's more than enough work for all of us to be doing. Where can I look to my next mountain to be doing that work that's more fulfilling for me? And let these young folk take on this one right here. Yeah.
Right, right, absolutely. And I think that goes right alongside with doing our own work and growing internally
Hmm.
as well, right? And
Hmm.
so, I mean, maybe that's a good place for me to kind of move forward with that too, is
Hmm.
yeah, so I have been on an alcohol-free journey now for, yeah, for several years, and I'm just completely alcohol-free. It'll be 2 years at the end of August, and
Congratulations. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. And it's been, I mean, I always say like I ride motorcycles. I love going on motorcycle adventures, leading women on adventures. I love
Mm,
hiking and being on those kind of adventures. And the same thing, this feels like an inner adventure,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And just the explorations and the things, I think as you were just talking and thinking about staying stuck
Hmm.
versus stepping out. I mean, we just start playing so small. And
Hmm.
when, yeah, our world starts closing in on us and we think, I mean, I think we do that to ourselves because it's these, self-limiting beliefs that keep us safe. And so
Hmm.
to take the risks and take the challenges to step out into places that maybe are scary, right? Um, a beautiful Buddhist author, Pema Chodron, one of the titles of her books is called "The Places That Scare Us," or "The
Mm,
Places That Scare You." Um, and I think though that's what keeps. us alive, what keeps our edge growing, right? And so, yeah, just this process, I think to also say around that is, um, my passion lies in women-centered
Yeah.
organizations, women run, and so I'm in this women's led and women's growth community where I've been for the last 3 years called Zero Proof Life. And um, it's just this beautiful environment where you can take risks to be vulnerable and you can step into your own power, and people see you, and like, I don't know, it's a state of belonging that I've struggled to have, right? I think in the social work field, I'll just speak for me, but like
Mm-hmm.
I certainly sublimated a lot of belonging by being of service, right, to other people, and doing the good things for other people out there. And I was pretty much born to hold other people's
Mm-hmm.
trauma and all of those things, but I really had to learn to hold my own
Yeah.
and hold my own trauma, and to I really had to learn how to belong in a way that just for being me, right?
Mm-hmm.
You talking about my voice, I have to tell you, like when I first started in sharing in this women's growth community that I'm in, oh my God, I cried every time I shared for almost a year. And
Mm.
so for me now to be here talking to you, it's just an amazing process of continuing to be supported and belonging, and continuing to yeah, just take those steps to grow. And again, coming back to social work, that um, I think that, I mean, that's what we do. We just continually grow ourselves, um, and we continually try and strive to grow, the bigger society, bigger community. And you and I think we're talking a little bit earlier too about this sense of not belonging that's happening in the
Mm-hmm.
world, right? And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
um, disconnection, that siloing and othering, and you're over there and I'm over here, right? Things that are going on in our world that don't jive with social workers, right? We all
Mm-hmm.
want to figure these things out and make sense of things. And you know, I hear people talk about mental illness, right? And the shootings and things that happen, and how, mental illness is a piece of it. And I no longer believe that in any sense of it. I think it's a social illness. And it's this sense of, we don't know how to belong to each other anymore. We don't know how to find ourselves. And there's something about finding a place where you can just be and just belong and say the things that are hard to say, and still be met in love, and be held sacred, right? Because this life is sacred. And when we lose sight
Mm-hmm.
of all of that, it becomes rote and it becomes mundane, and we become disconnected. And yeah, and then we do awful things to each other as human beings.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think, yeah, those are just, I think, my two next kind of directions are working with mindset and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how that impacts our health span, and working on social illness and how we can reframe that, and work together to feel more of a cohesive, um, yeah, just a cohesive, inclusive community, I think.
Mm-hmm. So beautiful. And I
Mm.
hope that your first podcast interview today is one of the starts to
Yeah.
doing that, to pivoting into that direction, because yeah, that was
Well,
beautiful.
thank you, Renita. And just to say that, I don't share if I don't feel heard. And
Mm-hmm.
I listened to your podcast, and, we spoke in person and we met. And there's so much more I think that you and I could talk about. But just to know, I'm honored to be here with you today. And I think that the work you're doing here to help other social workers keep going and keep that fire lit underneath them is so powerful and so important. So I'm honored to be here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And thank you for that. And
Yeah.
one last thing before we move on to your second question or your next question is never really this was the first podcast I think we spoke directly to social workers in our generation, and just wanted I want to make sure we
Mhm.
encourage, don't stay stagnant, you know, have adventures, social work to me is this big playground, and you can just go
Yes.
like, where am I going to go on the swings next? Am I going to go on the monkey bars next? There's just so much you can do in this profession, which is why probably I'm still in love with it, because I have ADD. I'm like, oh. I can do all of these things in social work. And so talking to folks who are seeing these young, beautiful, obviously I'm thinking women, but men, women, everybody, all the people coming up and doing amazing things within the field to turn over some of these outdated systems, then that just
Hmm.
means we get to go and do the next thing. Just
Yes.
go and do the next thing and go have fun with it. And it was probably something you were always meant to do to begin with. All right, I'm moving to our next question. I met you at the Maria Shriver Women in Alzheimer Movement forum that she had in Las Vegas at the Cleveland Clinic
Hmm.
last month. I think it was in May.
Hmm.
And, I'm about to ask you about what population you're passionate about and work in. And you already talked a little bit about elder adults. But what surprised me, and answer however, but I wanted you to say this. What surprised me in that women's and Alzheimer movement luncheon that we were at with Maria Shriver, it wasn't about elder people.
Mm.
I already knew about, but really like resonated with perimenopause and menopausal women. And even there was a young woman there who talked about how pregnancy changed her brain, because really they were talking about women and brain health
Hmm.
versus, and I had my mindset thinking we were just going to be talking about the elderly, but really we were talking about women's brain health through the whole lifespan. And so for me, women have been a population. And so I think I made an assumption that the elderly population would be the population you're most passionate about. And so I want you to say, yeah, Rita, you were right, or challenge me on that. So, what population are you most passionate about and why?
Well, it's interesting because I've, like I said, I've worked with so many different populations, and the population that's in front of me at the time is the one
Mm,
that's I'm
yeah,
most passionate about, right? And
yeah.
there's something about like who shows up is what I need, right? So there is that.
Hmm.
There is that. But yeah, I mean, right now, I think it's about the human potential, right?
Yeah.
And women centered. And yeah, I mean, the things that stood out to me at that event, the Cleveland Clinic, can I just say,
Mm,
hands down, it's the Lou Rugo Center for Brain Health here in Las Vegas, and they're a nonprofit, do so many great things for caregivers, and just the general community. The educational events that they put on are world class and phenomenal. I'm so glad I went that day,
yeah.
to meet you there, and also to hear just about like they're doing such inspiring work, right?
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, just about the last 5 years, how Maria Shriver and her team are really worked on increasing the funding for research for women's health, and how that just wasn't a priority, and how some of the previous data and research was skewed because they didn't understand there wasn't enough research done. And so it's very exciting to me, the progress, I
Hmm.
think, moving forward. And I think that's where I am actually, is the progress, the moving forward, and the human potential. And you talk about us aging, we're really just babies, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we're really in the like early
Hmm.
stages, middle age. Um, and I think it's important to recognize, we don't live forever. And I mean, I can see my father-in-law, is 75, and that's 20 years, right? That on one
Hmm.
hand, that seems so far. And on another hand, I know it's not far at all. And I don't know, I feel like I'm coming more and more alive, um, probably from this alcohol-free
Hmm.
space, and this more connected space to others and to myself. But also, I just see so much potential, and there's so many places like you were describing that I want to go and explore. And I don't know. I know they include women.
Yeah.
I know that they include trees. I know that they include, and like I'm
Mm,
very much into the ecotherapy as well. And knowing that staying connected to nature, we are nature. And
Yeah.
so staying connected to that and close to our own nature, and the birds and the whales and the trees, like that, all of that feeds my soul. And so
Hmm.
that's the population that I'm most excited about. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Christy, just talking to you has like, I feel like mind explosions are happening, brain explosions are happening in my head right now. I had never heard of specializing in Buddhist psychotherapy. I had not heard of eco therapy before. And my son just sent me a video of the birds because I have a bird feeder out there. I
Oh,
love the
yeah.
birds and I love the trees. And again, it goes back to how can you pull in the things that you're already doing in your own life that are healing you? I know when I went to my private practice, when I meet a new client, I always say to that new client, I'm going to show up as my authentic self. And this is the way that I show up. I bring tarot and astrology into my practice. And if that resonates with you, sometimes I'll show you what I'm talking about, and sometimes I won't. But I want you to know that that's what I also bring to the table. Obviously, I have 26 years of social work experience. I'm licensed in multiple states, but I also bring this piece with me as well. And
Yeah.
for years, I was scared to say that, but I say that because that's what helped heal me when I was at my when I was at my sickest. And so
Mhm.
I bring to the table the thing that helped make me whole. And
Mhm.
what I'm hearing you say is that that's what you bring to the table as well, are the things that bring you whole. And again, going back to the beginning of our conversation, when we allow ourselves to do that, we're also giving the person in front of us permission to bring all of the pieces of themselves that help to feel them, make them feel whole as well.
Oh, so beautiful.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. If we're not feeding, right? If we're not getting nourished, yeah, it just leads to that stagnation and it leads to us being disconnected. So absolutely. What are the things that feed you? Go do that
Yeah. Go and
and
do
come
that.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is one belief about social work that you started on this journey with that you feel has changed the most?
The things that I was thinking about, I think I've already said. Like this piece about that it's a continuous evolution, that it's a lifelong journey, and that if you don't do that work, um, yeah, you won't be here, right? You'll be burned out.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be on to
Mm-hmm.
something else, and or you just won't be effective. And I think people say things, but until you actually feel them in your heart, like it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And like that's just such a truth to me now that I just know that that ever evolving nature of things is so crucial and so important. So yeah, I think that's just the piece that I would say.
And I was rereading your bio just now, and it said a value that became wholeheartedness is a value that became central to
Yeah.
you after confronting burnout and personal loss. And I think as social workers, we think, oh, only the clients, right? But then to be able to be so transparent and again, like you said, vulnerable to admit that you experience burnout and, having a 20 plus year career in social work. Just briefly, would you talk to us about how you confronted burnout and your own personal loss?
Yeah, and the every time I hear the word or say the word wholeheartedness, it takes me
Mm-hmm.
immediately back to 20 years ago. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
when there's a poet, his name is David White, and he was at that time, he's since evolved as well, but at that time he was really teaching and using his poetry about bringing soul back into a corporate America. And one of the quotes that really made a big difference to me was that, and I may not get it exactly right, but something about, that the antidote to exhaustion is not necessarily rest, but it's wholeheartedness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just really speaks to me because, I mean, we already said so many times, like those moments when the system feels like you can't get momentum, or your creativity is stymied, or it feels like not the right fit and maybe it's time to move on, right? Um, like just those moments are when the job feels so exhausting. I think that's the moment when you think about either finding a way to turn that around, finding a way within you to just view it differently, to bring one, maybe, like, specifically, there were moments, at my current job a few years back where, I didn't feel like my skills were being used to their fullest. I didn't feel heard.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really feel like the folks who were in charge were really looking out, for our staff, and that I was having a hard time with that, right? And so, yeah, it's like, so what do? You keep showing up. Um, for me, I really had to shift my focus to, okay, I'm going to continue to do my job, but here's where I'm going to put most of my focus, right? I'm not going to put my focus on beating my head against a wall or trying to convince people of certain things. It's like there's a time and a place, and this isn't the time for me to make macro level and policy
Mm-hmm.
shifts, that seem beneficial, but that just wasn't the place. My place at that time was to shift to our staff and the
Mm-hmm.
clients. And so I just wholeheartedly went that direction. It's like, okay, how these staff are being really, not well cared for. And so, what's my part? What can I do to support them? What can I do to really step into that space and help train the new younger folks that are coming up from that as well? Help teach them how to advocate for themselves, and,
Mm-hmm.
um, hopefully do it in a way that my very first job where I got fired, right? And not in that way, but, how can I step into now being more of a leader in that role and help them? I actually just in Zero Proof Life, I just they shared this kind of journal reflection question about, um, how can you advocate for yourself with clarity and love,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, like, helping teach young social workers too, it's like, yeah, advocate, advocate, advocate. But how can you advocate first for yourself with clarity and love and set those boundaries? And then also advocate for others as well with clarity and love, and, viewing the whole big picture, and not always, I don't know, there's that younger part of me that I can see that was fighting just to be fighting sometimes, right? And, um, I think, yeah, stepping more into a wiser place of knowing when to fight, and when to, change your focus and bring your heart to where it can be heard, and felt. So,
Because even though that might be happening, I'm talking about management or admin, you
mm,
are apparently there for a reason. Find that reason.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
find that reason. I love that. And I'm also just thinking about, uh, I know we're getting to our last question, but I'm thinking about some of my social workers who are advocating for themselves and are doing it in such an emotional way. And then they feel bad because they were so emotional when they were
Mhm.
advocating.
Yeah.
And I love that you're saying learning how to advocate in clarity and love.
I would also say, like, that's a place where our generation can step
Hmm.
in and say, those emotions are okay.
Okay. And I say,
Right.
uh-huh,
Bring it, and let me help hold this, and let's get it clearer, so that, when you go speak to people who don't understand those emotions and who can't hold those emotions, let's help. But my gosh, yeah, bring the emotions, bring the passion. And I think that's something that, yeah, we just need to help help with that, hold and clarity, and, bring that fullness, into being. So I don't know.
that's it. That's perfect. Christy, it has been such an honor getting to hold this space with you today. And we are at our final question. And you kind of touched it a little bit, but I'm going back again to this amazing bio that you provided, but your belief in the human spirit. And, we're just coming off of a weekend where we had the No King's Day protest and some of the other stuff that happened over this past weekend, which was very, very,
Yeah.
with and you said it, some of the stuff that is happening is not in alignment with our social work values, or how we have perceived our social work values. What your belief in the human spirit, how do you see us getting through, especially with social workers on the front line of so many of these issues? How do you see us getting through all of this?
Wow, that's a little question, isn't it?
Uh-huh. It's a little
Yeah, I mean,
answer.
well, I think it is a little answer. I mean, I think it does. It
Mm-hmm.
comes back to, for me, it comes back to feeling like we belong. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that we belong to nature, we belong to this earth, we belong
Yeah.
to each other. And, I do hold, I don't know. I mean, I think that our society, we've progressed in so many ways, and yet feels like we're so young and so immature.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I mean, I hold a strong hope for our future, and some days it's exhausting. And I mean, I just see so many good people working on advancing um, health span, advancing lifespan. And I think there's a place for us to advance wisdom and advance our hearts. And I don't know, this word belonging just keeps coming back to
Mm-hmm.
me because I think that's at the root of everything. You know, when when I feel like I belong, when I feel like I hang out with people who can see me,
Mm-hmm.
and who know me, then I can start to see me and know me, right? And when I'm hanging out with people who can't see me, then I lose track of me. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a big piece of this social illness that's happening is we lose track of ourselves. And so the more that we can find those places where we're held sacred and we're held safe and where we can really be true to each of our unique little beings, and find that sense of belonging. I really think that's the answer. It is for today for me. So,
I agree. I agree. And I think
yeah,
social workers do such an amazing job of holding space for the sacredness of life.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
As have you done today. Thank you so
Oh,
much. Yeah, yeah. I was very
yay.
nervous about coming on, and I feel very cared for, so I appreciate your holding.
Yeah. This was an amazing interview. I'm so glad you said yes. I am so glad you said yes. Thank you for joining the Goddesses of Social Work podcast. I'm so glad you were here with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Goddesses of Social Work podcast. We are glad you were here. If you like this episode, please come back to hear more stories of the journeys through social work, and please leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. See you next time here on the Goddesses of Social Work podcast.